Rejected by Fiat at 17, discover the incredible journey of Enzo Ferrari. A life-changing triumph. Enzo Ferrari stood at the crossroads of his dreams. A young heart pounding with ambition, the sound of revving engines echoing in his ears. But when the crisp rejection letter from the Fiat plant arrived, everything he envisioned crumbled in an instant. It wasn't just about the apprenticeship. It felt like the whole town of La Ville denied his aspirations, dimming the fiery hope that once fueled him. His father, a proud veteran, noticed the change in his son. Enzo had always imagined himself behind the wheel, the wind whipping through his hair, racing towards a future brimming with promise. But now, he felt lost. The whispers of friends who once cheered for him turned into dimming echoes of doubt. Maybe you should pick something more realistic, they said, each word piercing deeper than the last. He tried to shake off the disappointment, but it clung to him like a shadow. Beneath the flickering garage lights, Enzo watched as his father polished his cherished old car, a gleaming relic of their shared dreams. Ralph Ferrari had told tales of perseverance during the war, stories filled with grit and unyielding spirit. That night, with tears in his eyes, Enzo made a decision. He de-built his racing car from scratch. It became his lifeline, the very chance to reclaim the dream that felt snatched away. Just then, Tony, the grizzled old mechanic next door, caught wind of Enzo's ambitions. "You need help, kid?" he asked, warmth in his voice that seeped into Enzo's crushed spirit like sunlight after a storm. Their late-night chats with wrenches and grease became the highlight of his days. Each bolt they tightened, an act of friendship and belief. Grit and determination. That's the key, Tony would say, his hands rough yet gentle, igniting flames of inspiration in Enzo's heart. Word spread in their tight-knit neighborhood about Enzo's project, igniting renewed excitement. But whispers of envy and judgment soon resurfaced as news broke of an upcoming prestigious race, an opportunity that could change everything. As pals exchanged skeptical looks behind his back, Enzo could feel a knot tightening in his chest. Would he rise or fall? Days swirled by, his makeshift car taking shape amid growing tensions. The community's support wavered with every setback. The shadows of doubt loomed larger. Then came the scandal involving a family friend, sparking distrust and resentment in La Ville, the very people who once believed in him now questioning his talent. Enzo felt the wall of isolation build higher. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As race day loomed close, doubts began to seep into Enzo's bones. Panic and pressure weighed down on him, threatening to drown the fervor that had ignited his aspirations. The town, both a source of joy and pain, felt divided, like a simmering cauldron ready to boil over. The sun rose on race day, a golden glow that danced on the asphalt like an omen of hope. But just as he strapped into the cockpit, a shocking revelation shattered his world. A secret, one that could dismantle everything: the bonds of friendship, the trust of family, and the validation he so desperately craved. As the countdown began, Enzo stood paralyzed, struggling to find the courage to race, not only against time and for his dreams, but also for his very place in the community he fought so hard to belong to. The question loomed, heavy and unyielding. Would he find strength to push through, or would he crumble under the weight of it all? The roar of the crowd surged like a wave, crashing against the barriers as Enzo sat in the car, heart drumming in time with the engine's idle. The world blurred around him, the pit crew fussing, mechanics shouting, and fans chanting. Yet all he could focus on was the secret threatening to unravel his resolve. It burned inside him, gnawing at his insides. This wasn't just a race. It felt like an ultimatum. The starting lights flickered to life: red, orange, green. And then, with a surge, they were off. Tires screeched against asphalt. The world outside transformed into a whirlwind of sound and speed. Enzo felt a fleeting moment of freedom as the wind whipped against his face. But that moment dissipated like steam, replaced by the weight of expectations. Each lap swirled around him, a test of skill, but also a haunting reminder of what lay hidden. Trying to shake off the ghosts of doubt, he focused on the track, gripping the steering wheel tightly. The other competitors roared past him, the bright cars slingshotting ahead. Each flash of color felt like a knife, a reminder that he was an outsider in a world dominated by seasoned drivers. Yet just as despair threatened to pull him under, Tony's words echoed in his mind. Grit and determination, that's the key. He pushed the pedal down, fighting time and his sense of worth as they approached the final lap. Enzo's breath quickened not just from the effort, but from the revelation now pounding inside him. He could pour every ounce of energy into this race. But if he didn't confront the secret looming like a dark cloud, his triumph would be hollow. The shadow of the truth stood between him and victory, a divide he couldn't ignore. His closest friends had become estranged, and with each passing moment, he felt their disappointment. The community's whispers thrummed in the background, every sneer and doubtful glance echoing louder. If he finished this race, would it be enough to mend the fences? Or had he already crossed a point of no return? Enzo entered the final stretch, heart racing, fear mingling with determination. He could see the finish line shimmering ahead, but what awaited him on the other side? He caught the gaze of a familiar face in the crowd. Ralph. His father, shoulders heavy with the burden of expectation. Would he look at his son with pride or regret? His father's faith had been the bedrock of Enzo's dreams, and he couldn't bear the thought of disappointment. Then came the moment, the finish line blurred by his own tears. As his car crossed, the world erupted into cheers, but all he felt was a deafening silence inside. Victory was in his grasp, yet he was hollow, shackled by a weight he couldn't shake. With adrenaline and uncertainty coursing through him, he parked his car and stepped out, feeling every eye upon him. As the celebrations unfolded, he stood there a champion in the eyes of many, yet feeling more like a fraud. The award was one thing, but facing the truth was another. How could he celebrate a win when so much remained unspoken? He knew the time had come to confront not just his fears, but the truths that gnawed at him. As he took a step toward the crowd, he wondered, could he own his story, or would the darkness win? With the cheers ringing in his ears, a new thought pierced through the chaos. What if confronting the truth could lead to an even greater triumph? As Enzo stood at the edge of the track, the cheers faded into a dull roar, the faces of the crowd blurring into one another. He felt suspended in that moment, the weight of his victory suffocating him. They were celebrating a champion, but deep inside, he was still that boy rejected by Fiat, a constant reminder of failure that haunted him during his every triumph. A few feet away, Ralph's expression shifted from expectation to something softer, almost tentative. The pride he had longed to see in his father's eyes was tangled with uncertainty. Would it be right to celebrate when he still felt so lost? What good was a trophy when the truth remained unspoken? He took a breath, trying to find courage. Enzo! A familiar voice broke through the haze. It was Tony, his mentor and friend. He rushed toward him, arms outstretched. You did it, my friend. You really did it. Tony's joy radiated like sunlight, illuminating Enzo's mixed feelings. But as his friend wrapped him in a warm embrace, Enzo felt small, his triumph overshadowed by an undeniable realization. He hadn't claimed victory over the most significant opponent yet himself. The celebrations continued, confetti falling like colorful rain. But all he could think of were the conversations left unsaid, the apologies and confessions that seemed to pile higher than the cheers. Let us hit the podium, Tony urged, pulling him toward the spotlight. The glimmering trophy waited, a reminder that this could be a moment to remember or a moment to regret if he didn't let the truth out. Enzo nodded absently, instinctively aware of each TV camera pointed his way, the eyes of fans glued to his every move. In the midst of laughter and applause, he spotted familiar faces, friends turned strangers, whispering among themselves. They used to cheer him on, but now he felt the weight of their judgment. What did they see when they looked at him? Just as Tony stepped forward to make room for the cameras, Enzo felt a familiar knot tighten in his stomach. In that second, he could decide whether to keep the truth hidden or let it see the light for once. But before he could fully wrestle with his thoughts, the podium filled up. Enzo stood hesitantly next to fellow racers. They all wore their smiles, trophies held high, but Enzo felt ready to shatter the facade. He could step up to the microphone, declare himself the winner, and still feel defeated inside. Champions aren't just defined by their wins, he mused in a sudden burst of clarity. They're also about facing their battles, even the ones nobody else sees. His heart raced, adrenaline mixing with conviction. He glanced back at Ralph, who seemed to hold his breath, waiting. As the announcer designated time for speeches, Enzo felt a surge of bravery wash over him. Would they understand? How would they react when he opened up about his fears, his failures? Taking a deep breath, he stepped forward, feeling the weight of prepared words resting on his tongue. His heart pounded louder than the crowd, drowning everything else out. "May I have your attention, please?" The noise began to dim. Around him, expressions shifted, curiosity sparking in the crowd. Enzo's palms grew sweaty, but he couldn't retreat now. Today wasn't just about racing, it's about battling your demons. It's about telling the truth. His voice trembled, but he forged on, aware of the moment's significance. As the crowd drew closer, hanging on to his every word, he felt the room thrum with energy. Today suddenly, the unmistakable sound of a car horn blared through the noise, interrupting his moment. Panic surged within him. The tone was frantic. What was happening? He turned, trying to catch sight of the chaos erupting from the pit area. Something was wrong, and in that instant, he feared it had just become a question of overcoming something far greater than himself. Would this dark moment threaten everything he had fought for? The tension in the air was tangible as Enzo turned to face the pit area, where frantic movements had begun to unfold. Gasps erupted from the crowd, punctuating the fervor of loud celebrations. Something stirred within him, like a gnawing fear just beneath the surface. What could it mean? Why was chaos infiltrating what should be been a moment of pure joy? "Enzo, what's wrong?" Tony's voice pierced through the clamor, a path of concern threading between them. But already, Enzo was in motion, moving away from the podium. He could feel the cheers morphing into anxious murmurs, as if everyone was simultaneously tuning into the same dreadful frequency. He raced past the congratulatory smiles, the bright cameras losing focus in his peripheral vision. Each hurried step felt heavy, weighted by an undefined urgency. The pit area was a whirlwind of activity, mechanics and crew members scrambling. As Enzo approached, he spotted one of the pit team members kneeling on the ground, a sight that sent chills down his spine. Heart pounding, he pushed through the gathered crowd to get a clearer view. "What happened?" he managed to ask, his throat dry and raw. One of the crew members looked up, fear etched across their face. "It's Lucas. He got hit by the tire when it rolled off the cart." We called for help, but the words hung in the air, an echo that dampened the thrill of victory he had just felt. Lucas, part of his team, part of their shared journey, now lay motionless on the ground. The moment stretched into eternity, joy giving way to panic, enthusiasm dissolving into dread. Enzo felt as if he were being pulled apart. The line between celebration and catastrophe blurred, and he couldn't grasp how the world around him had shifted so swiftly. His heart screamed. He had fought so hard to prove himself, to rise above the doubts cast on him since that painful rejection by Fiat. But how could he celebrate when someone lay injured because of it? "Get an ambulance." Tony's voice cut through the chaos, urgency crackling in his tone. Enzo felt the world dim as he knelt beside Lucas, who seemed so fragile, the pulse in his neck barely discernible. The seconds dragged on, each beat of time echoing with a deafening silence. Enzo glanced at Ralph in the distance, who wore a cloud of confusion and fear. He could see his father's inner turmoil. What good was a trophy if his heart was fractured? What kind of champion was he supposed to be? "Come on, Lucas, stay with us," he murmured, his own voice trembling, unaware of the tears pooling at the corners of his eyes. Help is coming. In that moment, the roaring crowd faded completely. Every cheer turned into faint echoes, the cheers for him falling flat against the backdrop of potential tragedy. He squeezed Lucas's hand, desperately trying to communicate strength. But the fear gnawed at him, louder than any crowd. What if he lost another person who mattered? As sirens wailed in the distance, he caught a glimpse of the trophy still glistening under the lights, a cruel reminder of a battle won, but one that felt hollow in the face of real loss. The ambulance arrived, lights flashing like a beacon amid the chaos. As they loaded Lucas onto a stretcher, Enzo's heart raced with turmoil. But just as quickly as the chaos began, clarity pierced through his fear. He had a choice to step out of the shadows of fear and face something bigger than himself. His journey was far from over. Perhaps it was time to break down the walls of silence, beginning with Ralph, confronting the truths he kept buried. With every moment that slipped by, Enzo felt a resolve building within him. In that instant, clarity mingled with uncertainty. What would he say when he finally gathered the courage to confront his past? And as the ambulance sped away, it took with it a piece of his heart, but left behind a spark of determination. This wasn't the end, this was the moment he would change everything. What lay ahead was just the beginning. What if, amid the chaos, this was how Enzo Ferrari finally became the man he needed to be? As the sirens faded into the distance, a heavy silence enveloped the pit area. Enzo remained on his knees, his hands trembling as he released Lucas's grasp. The world had shifted back to its chaotic rhythm, but he felt suspended in a haunting stillness. Everyone around him moved, but their actions seemed to blur, reduced to fleeting silhouettes against the backdrop of his swirling thoughts. Tony crouched beside him, his face taut with worry. "Enzo, we need to meet with the doctors. They'll tell us what's happening. You can't stay here like this." His voice was calm, steady, yet laced with the urgency of someone who understood the fragility of life all too well. Reluctantly, Enzo nodded. He stood, legs weak beneath him, the adrenaline making his heart race even faster. He felt a surge of anger brewing within a storm ready to erupt. Why did this happen? Why did it feel like fate had cruelly played its hand just when he thought he had gained something substantial? As they made their way toward the medical tent, the chaos of the crowd began to dissolve into a blurry haze. He could see Ralph pushed against the metal barricade, his face strained with concern. For a moment, their eyes locked, and Enzo felt an unsettling mix of fear and a yearning for connection. A connection they had been avoiding for too long. Inside the medical tent, the harsh fluorescent lights illuminated the faces of the medical staff rushing around. A doctor approached, her expression somber. "He's stable, but he needs surgery to remove some internal bleeding. We'll take care of him, I promise." Stable. That word stuck with him, hovering like a fragile thread, weaving through his racing thoughts. But before he could catch his breath, the doctor continued. "It's been a traumatic experience. He's going to need support, not just physically but emotionally." Enzo's mind raced. Lucas was one of them, someone who fought beside him, cheered him on. He remembered the times they'd shared laughter after exhausting practice sessions. How Lucas had always believed in him even when self-doubt crept in. This wasn't just an injury. This was a call to action for him, a reminder that success meant nothing without the people who believed and fought alongside you. Ralph stepped into the tent, and the weight of unspoken words hung between them. Enzo could see the worry etched across his father's face, and with it, a crack in his stoic demeanor. Would Ralph understand the urgency of being there for Lucas just as much as he had been focused on winning races? "Dad," Enzo said, forcing the words out. "We can't let this happen. We can't ignore it like we've done with other things. I need you to stand with me in this." Ralph paused, surprise flickering in his eyes. Enzo felt a surge of desperation. "I want to let Lucas feel like he's alone. We can't keep running from our fears. It's time to face the truth, even if it hurts." For the first time, Ralph's wall seemed to crack. He nodded slowly, his resolve shifting. "You're right. We will be there for him, for all of us." As they turned back toward the waiting area, Enzo felt the rush of something greater than just the tension of the race. It was a sense of purpose, a promise that the road ahead would be fraught with obstacles, but they would face it together. Life was unpredictable, a lesson he had learned bitterly. Yet, amid uncertainty, the possibility for transformation lingered like that faint spark of determination that refused to extinguish. Enzo's heart was heavy, but he also felt a surge of hope. He needed to reach out, not just to Lucas but to everyone who had shared in the journey, to speak truths long buried. He had begun to embrace the realities he'd dodged, yet the echoes of his past still haunted him, lurking in the shadows, waiting to emerge before he could fully plunge into those reflections. Something caught his eye, a glint of silver. It was the trophy still gleaming where it sat. It felt like a taunt now, a symbol of triumph that seemed worthless in the face of real struggles. Maybe I don't need it, he whispered, an idea beginning to form. What if the true victory lay in rebuilding connections? It was time to embrace the storm brewing within him, to make a choice. This was just the beginning of a path toward redemption. He had to find the courage to transform every scar into a testament of resilience. What awaited him on this path of confronting the past? And could he truly bridge the gap with those he had kept at arm's length? Enzo felt a weight lift slightly, as if the walls of uncertainty were starting to crumble. It was just a hint, but that spark was there, igniting a fortitude he didn't know he possessed. The glint from the trophy seemed to fade beneath the reality of the moment. Lucas was fighting for his life, and that was the battle he had to focus on. Let us go, Tony urged, interrupting Enzo's thoughts. The waiting area is full of people who care about him. They pushed through the curtain and stepped back into the bustling noise, the faint sounds of hope filled with murmurs and cries echoing through the tent. Enzo took a breath, steadying himself, as he scanned the crowd for familiar faces, friends, teammates, anyone who gathered to show their support. Ralph stayed close as they navigated the sea of worried expressions. The atmosphere was thick with anxiety, each person's thoughts swirling around their own fears, their own hopes. Though the medical staff bustled about, the silence spoke volumes. It was the kind of silence that settled between people when the weight of an unshared burden threatens to crush the air around them. Suddenly, a familiar figure stepped forward. It was Mia, Lucas's younger sister. Her eyes were red from crying, and her shoulders trembled. Enzo rushed toward her, pulling her into a comforting embrace. "I'm so sorry, Mia," he whispered, unable to find more words. This wasn't just Lucas. This was their whole family, and they were all in turmoil as they stood together. He felt her tiny frame shake as she wept. His heart clenched. "He's going to be okay," he assured her, even as doubt lingered in his own mind. "The doctors are going to take care of him." Mia looked up, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. What if he doesn't? What if he forgets everything? Enzo's heart ached. She was so scared, so fragile, and it brought him back to his own struggles, the fears he had buried deep inside. He won't forget you, or any of us. He loves you too much for that. We'll make sure he remembers. Promise. Ralph placed a comforting hand on Mia's shoulder, giving her an encouraging nod. The moment felt raw, intense, a reminder that their pain and fears were shared, binding them all together in a reality they couldn't escape. They were more than just a team. They were family. As time dragged on, every tick of the clock felt like a mile. Enzo paced while Ralph and Mia tried to distract themselves with small talk, but each sound drew him back to the underlying tension. He hated the waiting, the feeling of helplessness. Lucas was strong. He had to believe that. He tried to think of something, anything, that could alleviate the dreadful silence, but his thoughts spiraled to anger again. Why was this happening? Why was the world so unfair? His fingers brushed against the crumpled piece of paper in his pocket, the letter from the racing committee that had haunted him. He withdrew it, gazing at the rejection letter, the words seeming to mock him. Was this what it meant to be a racer? He thought bitterly. To lose everything at the hands of fate? Just as a wave of darkness threatened to wash over him, the doctor walked in. The sudden change of atmosphere felt electric. Conversations halted, breaths held. "Lucas is out of surgery," she announced, her voice steady, her expression unreadable. He's stable and resting. He's gonna need a lot of support. But he made it through. Relief flooded through him, flooding the cracks of despair with light. Hope surged back to life, and for the first time, a smile dared to break across his face. "Can we see him?" Mia asked, her voice small but strong, a flicker of determination lighting her eyes. "Not right away," the doctor said gently. "He'll be in recovery for a while. But I promise you'll see him as soon as he's ready. Just be there for him when he wakes up." As she spoke, something shifted inside Enzo. It wasn't just about racing anymore. It was about the people they fought for, the bonds they formed through endurance and scars. He looked at Ralph and Mia, their faces mirroring the same determination. He realized then that the path to redemption wasn't just about conquering his own fears. It was about standing united as a family, vulnerable yet fierce. And in that moment of clarity, he understood the fight ahead was a different kind of race. What would it take for him to become the person they all needed? Could he step up, becoming more than what he had been? As Lucas lay fighting for his future, Enzo felt the urgency growing within him to redefine his own. Maybe it was time to finally face his demons, and he wondered, could the healing begin with one open conversation after another? Enzo shifted nervously, glancing back at the doctor as she disappeared through the curtain. The rush of relief ignited a flurry of questions now filling the void left in the wake of uncertainty. What would Lucas remember when he woke up? Would their bond still be unbreakable? Enzo felt the dark weight of doubt threaten to tug him back down. Yet he pushed it aside, focusing instead on the here and now. "Let us find a place to sit," Ralph suggested, gently steering them toward a quiet corner away from the bustling crowd. Mia clutched Enzo's hand, her grip both reassuring and desperate. She needed comfort too, and he wanted nothing more than to give that to her. As they settled into a row of chairs, the quiet hum of worry enveloped them again. The sounds of the hospital faded into the background, and Enzo could almost hear the racing heartbeat in his ears. He could picture Lucas, battling through the haze of anesthesia, his spirit fighting against the shadows that threatened to creep in. "You really think he'll remember us?" Mia's voice broke the silence, her innocence cutting through his thoughts like a blade. "I do," Enzo replied firmly. "He has a big heart, you know? It'll be like riding a bike for him, even if he doesn't recall the details right away." Mia's brows furrowed. "But what if he doesn't? What if he's different?" "There's a chance he may seem different," Enzo admitted. "But what matters is that we're all here for him. That's what family does. We love each other through everything." Ralph nodded, picking up on the serious tone. "We'll be by his side. We'll remind him of all the good times, all the laughter we've shared. And he'll find his way back to us." As the trio sat in shared silence, a flicker of determination ignited inside Enzo. He thought back to the rejection letter in his pocket. He realized how he had clung to that pain, letting it define him. Could he shift his focus from his own struggles to be present for Lucas? The road to healing was also one of supporting others. Minutes turned to hours, and time became a relentless opponent. Enzo couldn't shake the unease that clawed at his chest. No matter how many reassurances he shared with Mia, he couldn't fully quell the storms brewing inside him. But there was a strange comfort in the waiting room, a shared pain binding them closely. Then, the door swung open again, and out stepped a familiar figure, Miss Porter, Lucas's history teacher and mentor. A wave of relief washed over Enzo, dotted with a touch of worry as he noticed her serious demeanor. "Hey, everyone," she greeted softly, and the warmth in her voice enveloped them. "I just spoke with the doctor. They're moving Lucas to a private room soon. He's stable, and that's a good sign. What can we do for him?" Mia asked, her voice now tinged with purpose. Miss Porter smiled gently. "Be there for him. Just sit with him. Share stories. Remind him of everything he loves. The comfort of familiar voices can make all the difference." In that moment, Enzo understood. As he looked into Mia's hopeful eyes and Ralph's determined face, he felt the burden of their shared fears blend into something deeper: expectation, anticipation, and an unbreakable thread woven through love. Then, Let us be ready to tell him everything, Enzo said, determination crystallizing within him. And we'll make sure he doesn't forget who he is or who we are. As the air shifted around them, a new feeling emerged, one of solidarity and strength. They were all in this together, and Enzo realized the fight was just beginning. We'll need to prepare, he added, a sense of urgency rising in him. I have things I need to say, to apologize for. His words hung between them, heavy with unspoken truths. Could he conquer his own fears and become the support Lucas needed? Would facing those demons allow him to reclaim his path and redefine everything that he thought he had lost? He closed his eyes, taking a deep breath. The healing had to start somewhere. And with Lucas's battle ahead, Enzo knew his own struggles were just as real. But would he find the courage to lay it all bare in front of them when the time came? The hallway seemed to stretch forever as Enzo fought the rising tide of nerves again. Each step toward Lucas's new room felt heavier than the last, laden with unfiltered hopes and regrets. Mia walked beside him, her fingers still intertwined with his, providing a tether to reality. Ralph was just ahead, casting glances back, urging them forward. Finally, they arrived at the door. It felt imposing, like a portal between their lives before the accident and the uncertainty that stretched out before them. Enzo's heart raced as he reached for the handle, hesitating for just a brief moment. It was a door to unknown memories. Would it open back into the laughter and friendship they had always known? Ready? He managed to ask, glancing sideways at Mia. She nodded fervently, biting her lower lip, a mixture of apprehension and excitement in her eyes. Ralph, ever the optimist, grinned. Let us do this. With a deep breath, Enzo pushed the door open. The warm glow of the private room enveloped them, contrasting starkly with the sterile whiteness of the waiting area. Lucas lay there, surrounded by machines that beeped softly, the steady rhythm of their sounds providing a sense of normalcy in the chaos that had defined their lives. As they entered, Lucas was still asleep. His face was peaceful, but the bandages wrapping his head reminded them of the fragility of life. Enzo felt a lump in his throat as he moved closer to the bed, the scent of antiseptic filling his senses. Hey, buddy, Ralph whispered, his voice barely above a murmur. Enzo watched as he leaned forward, brushing a hand over Lucas's arm. You've got this. We're all here waiting for you. Mia stepped up next, her voice more trembling than she had intended. Lucas, it's me, Mia. We love you so much. She knelt beside the bed, squeezing his hand tighter. Enzo's heart thudded heavily in his chest. He felt a surge of emotion, wanting to scream his fears away, but instead, he found his voice. Lucas, he began, his throat tightening. There is so much I need to tell you. So much I should said. I'm sorry for not being there like I should have been. I wished we'd spent more time together before all this. As he spoke, he noticed something shifting in Lucas's expression, the faintest flicker of movement in his eyelids. The moment captivated him. Lucas, can you hear me? If you can hear me, fight through this. Come back to us, buddy. We need you. Silence enveloped the room. Time felt like it stretched impossibly. Enzo glanced up at Mia and Ralph, sharing that same spark of hope that ignited in his chest. Without warning, the monitors began to beep with renewed urgency. Heads turned, and suddenly a nurse rushed in, her eyes darting. Stand back, please, she called, her voice authoritative. Panic surged as the world began to blur. Is he okay? Enzo stammered. Just give us a moment. The nurse instructed as others arrived, moving decisively to Lucas's side. The tension was unbearable. Heart pounding, Enzo felt a wave of emotion swell, fear wrapping itself tightly around him. Had he pushed too hard? Had his voice somehow called to Lucas in a way that drew him back? The thought churned in his mind like a tempest. Mia gripped his arm, her eyes wide, filled with uncertainty. Enzo didn't know what to do. All they could do was watch as the staff rushed to stabilize Lucas again. Minutes felt like hours, and every second that passed felt excruciating. Then, abruptly, one of the nurses shouted, "We need to get him stabilized." Enzo looked at Ralph, then at Mia. Their shared dread hung between them, Yet it was laced with belief, a fragile thread of hope in an unsettling reality. Would they truly be able to pull through this? Finally, as the medical team moved more smoothly, Lucas's eyes fluttered open. His gaze was unfocused at first, drifting past them. Enzo's heart stopped before he squeezed Mia's hand tighter. "Lucas!" Enzo cried, a mixture of relief and fear flooding him. "Can you hear us?" Lucas blinked several times, his expression slowly shifting, still a lost look in his eyes. Who are you?" The question pierced Enzo like a dagger. Time froze. The void of recognition hung in the air. What would they say now? Enzo opened his mouth to respond, but no words came out. Would they rebuild everything from the ground up? Would they be able to remind him of their bond, their love? In such a crucial moment, the struggle to reconnect felt monumental. As uncertainty loomed, Enzo realized one undeniable truth. They were on the edge of something profound, and now, the real fight for Lucas and for all of them was about to truly begin. The room was thick with tension as Enzo stared into Lucas's distant eyes. Each heartbeat felt like an echo, reverberating against the walls as they stood frozen in that moment. The air was dense, heavy with fear and hope, battling for dominance in their minds. What kind of answer could encapsulate years of friendship, memories, and unspoken love? Mia's grip tightened around Enzo's hand as she leaned closer to Lucas, her voice trembling. "Lucas, it's me. You know me, right? We've grown up together." She searched his face, desperate for a flicker of recognition. Ralph, trying to mask his own panic, chimed in. "Come on, man. We've gone through so much together. You can't just leave us like this." His voice cracked under the pressure, betraying the facade of strength he tried so hard to project. But Lucas's face remained blank, his brow furrowing in confusion. "No, I don't remember," he murmured, soft and broken. Enzo felt a crushing sensation in his chest, as if the very air around him had been stolen. Memories swirled in his mind, the laughter, the late-night conversations, the adventures. They didn't just fade. They were being erased, and he had no idea how to stop it. "Lucas, please," he finally managed to say, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm your best friend. We've been there for each other through thick and thin." He took a half-step closer, desperate to bridge the gap that felt insurmountable. "Think of the road trips, those stupid inside jokes, and the nights we spent talking about everything and nothing." Each word was a thread, trying to weave a tapestry of their shared life back together. Yet, the look in Lucas's eyes remained vacant, and the heartbeat of the room grew heavier. Just then, a doctor walked in, a set of charts tucked under their arm. After greeting the nurse, they turned to face the trio. "Sorry to interrupt, but we need to assess his cognitive function," they announced, taking charge with an air of authority. A shudder of dread coursed through Enzo. What if the doctor couldn't help? What if Lucas was lost to them forever? But there was no time for despair now. The doctor began asking Lucas simple questions about current events and familiar stories. "Do you know where you are?" the doctor asked, maintaining a calm demeanor. Lucas's brow creased deeper, frustration mounting. "I don't know," he replied, his voice wavering. Mia swallowed hard, tears threatening to spill. "The hospital, Lucas. You were in an accident. We're here with you." Enzo glanced at Mia, seeing the anguish reflected in her face. They were teetering on the edge, struggling against the tides of uncertainty. They had tried to reach him, and now, the hope was slowly slipping away with each inconclusive question. Then, in a moment of desperation, Ralph stepped forward again, his voice louder. "Lucas, remember that time we almost drove off the bridge on that laughter-filled trip to the beach? You were so scared, but you never said it out loud," he urged, pulling from the depths of their shared history, fishing for anything that might spark a flicker of recollection. Lucas paused, a flicker of confusion showing there was a spark somewhere deep inside him. For a moment, his eyes appeared to search the recesses of his mind. The room collectively held its breath, and just as quickly, that glimmer of recognition faded. "I'm sorry, I don't." Lucas trailed off, shaking his head, frustration clear on his face. Enzo felt like he had been punched in the stomach. It was one thing to face the possibility that Lucas was gone. It was an entirely different pain to see him so close, yet so far. Just then, Lucas turned to Enzo, locking eyes with him. "Why do you care so much?" he asked, vulnerability hiding beneath layers of confusion. Enzo's heart raced with the urgency of a life-or-death question. What would he say next to reignite the bond that felt like it slipped through his fingers? "Because you're family to me," he choked out, "and I'll do whatever it takes to bring you back." Lucas looked at him for a long moment, the world around them fading into a blur. Enzo waited, caught between the hope of rekindling their friendship and the agonizing doubt looming over them. "Family," Lucas repeated softly. Then the moment stretched thin, a fragile whisper of acknowledgement hanging in the air. But would it be enough? The doctor resumed asking questions, but Enzo couldn't shake off that flicker of conversation. Could the word family be the key? As they began discussing next steps with the medical team, Enzo felt a newfound determination surge within him. He wouldn't give up. There was a long road ahead, and each step would require courage, resilience, and connection. If Lucas needed to relearn who they were, he would help him every step of the way. As they prepared to leave the room, the weight of the situation settled around them. Each held hope as they stepped out. The heaviness cracked just slightly. But just when Enzo thought the moment was over, he caught the doctor looking back at Lucas. "We'll be working on regaining your memories," the doctor assured him, and Lucas merely nodded, a hint of something, maybe curiosity, flashing in his eyes. And in that spark, Enzo felt a renewed surge of hope. But would it be enough to tear down the walls that had built up around Lucas? As they stepped out into the hallway, Enzo knew this was just the beginning of their fight, and it would take everything he had to restore their bond. But would he find the strength to help resurrect Lucas's memories? Or would they be forever lost in the haze of uncertainty? With questions swirling in his mind, he took a deep breath, ready to face whatever came next. After all, it was only the beginning, but it felt like they were standing on the edge of something monumental. Would they discover the truth of their friendship, or would it lead them somewhere unexpected? The days blurred together, magic ebbing into monotony, as Enzo settled into a rhythm at the hospital. Moments stretched, waking him from dreams filled with racing cars and excitement, only to bring him back to the stark white walls of Lucas's room, humming with machines that felt like heartbeats. He was there every day, alongside Ralph and Mia, each of them taking turns to share stories, laughter, and memories like lifelines reaching out to connect with Lucas's fading spirit. "What if he remembers?" Enzo would whisper to Ralph during quiet moments, the hope flickering like candlelight amid the shadows of worry. Ralph would always nod, reassuringly, though Enzo could see the worry stitched into his brow. On a warm Thursday, everything shifted. Lucas had been quieter, a deep cloud of frustration and despair hanging around him. He hadn't responded to any of Enzo's efforts to draw him back, and the ache in Enzo's heart felt sharp and relentless. But just as doubt began to creep in, a breakthrough arrived, washing over him with energy. "Lucas, remember when we went to that goofy amusement park? You were scared to ride the Ferris wheel," Enzo exclaimed one afternoon, his voice rising with excitement. Lucas paused, the corners of his mouth twitching upward. "I hated it." But then Enzo noticed the flicker in his eyes. Was it recognition? Hope swelled in his chest like a bird breaking free. "Yes. You were clinging to Mia for dear life. You looked more terrified than a baby rabbit." Enzo laughed, sharing a glance with Mia, whose own eyes burned bright with anticipation. A faint smile creased Lucas's lips, and Enzo felt the air shift. The warmth of memory engulfed him, flooding back like a long-lost song. "Yeah, I remember," he murmured, his voice cracking with uncertainty. Encouraged, Enzo leaned in closer. "You love when I can't keep it together on rides. It always made you laugh." The way Lucas responded, even with a whisper of expression, felt monumental. It was enough to fuel Enzo's hope. It was more than just a single memory. It was the awakening of a friendship that may never die. Days turned into healing waves, leaving behind moments when laughter would echo in the hospital room, soft stories weaving memories together, binding them tighter. Each discovered memory reignited old connections. Enzo spoke often of shared jokes, races they dreamed of winning, and even those late-night talks where everything felt possible. Lucas began to respond. Then, one evening, as they huddled together, the shift felt undeniable. Lucas turned, his gaze darting back and forth between the three of them. "You guys are always here." He glanced at Enzo. "Why?" "Because you're family, man," Enzo said, his voice thick with emotion. "You've always been. It's what we do. We fight for each other, remember?" Lucas nodded, a flicker of understanding flickering in the depths of his eyes. Enzo's heart thumped loudly, a thrilling rush coursing through him. They weren't just regaining memories. They were rallying together in an army that faced fears together. Days of recovery and remembering turned into a steady flow of rehabilitation. Once quiet and unsure, Lucas's laughter began to fill the hospital room, buoyed by the hope they nurtured together. Each day unfolded more like a tapestry, the threads weaving tighter with every shared story and experience they relived. But Enzo, grappling with his own history, acknowledged the ghosts lurking behind his happiness. They lingered, whispering doubts, showing him old wounds and reminding him of past failures. Finally, one evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the room in hues of deep orange, Enzo found his voice. "Lucas," he said softly, turning to face his friend, "there is something I need to say. I'm sorry for being so obsessed with racing. I pushed you away when you needed me." Lucas looked up, surprise mingling with warmth in his eyes. "Why do you think I needed you?" "Because everyone deserves a friend who stays, who stands by them, even when things get hard," Enzo replied, speaking from the depths of his heart. In that moment, Lucas reached for Enzo's hand, the connection feeling electric. "You're still that friend. And thanks. It means a lot." Late that night, Enzo found himself alone, leaning against the hospital wall as a wave of relief washed over him. The victory at the race felt paltry compared to the joy of bringing his friend back to life. He understood triumph was built from the people around him, from forgiveness, and the courage to confront fears together. As he stepped into the dim hallway, he spotted Ralph and Mia waiting, hearts united like train cars on the same track, ready to continue navigating this journey together. "Today was a win," Ralph said, his eyes lighting up, an expression of pride washing over him. Enzo nodded, feeling the warmth of family surround him. "Yeah," he said, emotion lingering in his voice. "We're just getting started." As they left the hospital that evening, a flood of gratitude washed over him. Tomorrow, they would step into the light of a new day with fresh hopes, new memories, and a bond forged through the struggles they faced together. This wasn't just the story of racing. It was a testament to love, resilience, and the undeniable power of friendship to heal wounds deeper than any kind of loss. And as they stepped outside, the sound of distant engines revving filled the air, igniting an unwavering belief within him this was a race worth fighting for. Together, So hear us your moment to keep the journey alive. If you found inspiration in Enzo's story, the time is now to subscribe immediately to our channel, so you won't miss the next transformative saga. Hit that like button now to feed the algorithm and show your appreciation for heartfelt tales. We want to hear from you. Comment below and share your feelings about this ending. And don't wait not even one more second. Be a beacon of hope and share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Only true fans understand how crucial it is to support the channel through these actions.